Well, here we are, at the end of a long and twisted trail of bad ideas and even worse execution, as if the audience has just emerged from Mirkwood, beaten and battered by barrow wights that aren't even supposed to exist in this age. And if you're telling yourself that barrow wights aren't even supposed to be in Mirkwood, you'd be right. But my statement was delivered with all the attention and care that Amazon has given to this series.
It takes all of Middle Earth to bring this to life, and we have some of the most talented folks in the world working with us. And seeing them all here, it's truly a celebration.
This show is like a televised Dunning-Kruger effect, where the most incompetent people are the most self-assured, and the least self-aware about their own failings. It's kind of amazing to behold. So, how does this torturous path end? Does it redeem all of the missteps that came before it? Does it wrap up the meandering and simultaneously rushed second season with a bang? Or is everything resolved quickly and unsatisfyingly while Galadriel girl bosses her way to Sauron to hold her own against the Dark Lord with awkwardly shot and performed combat and a self-sacrifice that only she can make and somehow survive? I think you know the answer.
What's that smell?
I guess we have to stop saying not Gandalf now, as that obvious reveal was wheeled out near the end.
Thank you kindly, Grandalf.
Goodbye, Gandalf.
They've never seen an elf before.
Gandalf. That's what they're going to call me, isn't it?
Oh, you motherfuckers. Okay. All right.
It felt just as rushed, shallow, and unearned as most of the other storylines in this episode. Except for the Sauron and Celebrimbor slash Galadriel scenes, it's clear where the focus was, to the detriment of the other plot lines, which I guess is okay, at least for the Harfoots and Gandalf and Numenor and Theo and Isildur, as those threads feel pretty threadbare. The story focus should be on the elves and the rings and the Siege of Eregion, I guess. But it's a shame that the Balrog was completely rushed, and what ended up being a super stylish scene, but without much satisfaction. Never mind that the dwarves held their entire army back in episode 7 to deal with the Mad King.
Durin will come.
And then when the Balrog shows up, it's a one-on-one, with Durin soloing the Demon of Shadow and Flame like he's wearing a full Valor set or something.
Keep your feet on the ground.
It looks awesome, but it's done and dusted before you can say Bob's your uncle, and we're on to another loose thread to tie up. This is a major flaw of this show. Too many incidental characters taking time away from more interesting characters and storylines. Are the Harfoots really necessary? No, not at all. Does Theo matter? No. Do we care what Isildur is doing with the least loyal woman this side of Eriador?
No, God!
And given how Numenor is described in Tolkien's writing, the whole thing probably could have been handled differently, with a greater emphasis on the events leading up to the Siege of Eregion at first, and then more in-depth coverage of Numenor later. I don't know. Important events just felt too rushed in this episode, and in the entire season as well, while inconsequential events were given entirely too much time. Ah well, it is what it is, and we're at the end. So let's do a quick rundown of the episode. We start out with Durin the Younger confronting King Durin alone. So I don't know why you needed to hold the Dwarven army back last episode. King Durin is madly smashing the walls down, and Durin the Younger threatens to take his father's arm off if he doesn't take the ring off. He doesn't. There's some heartfelt dialogue, which is some of the best in the show.
You're strong enough to wield an axe, but are you strong enough to use it against your father?
Then King Durin turns and finishes smashing the wall down to reveal a huge deposit of mithril, when you-know-who shows up to dinner. The visuals for the Balrog are awesome. I can't fault that. But the look was already established in the Peter Jackson films, so I'm not going to give Amazon too much credit either. The Balrog slips, apparently, and in the meantime King Durin takes the Ring of Power off, and instead of running away to rally his army or something, which is still in Khazad-dûm, he takes an epic leap at the Balrog, which collapses the cavern entrance when their blades clash. And that's it. This epic confrontation that was hinted at since Season 1 is over before the opening credits roll. The scene looked incredible for sure, but it was over way too quickly.
Disappointed!
On to another disjointed scene and another meaningless storyline to wrap up. Gandalf wanders into the Stour village and meets not Saruman. This scene is so confusing. The Dark Wizard calls Gandalf an old friend and talks about defeating Sauron together, then brings out Nori and Poppy. But his soldiers? Mercenaries? Are holding them hostage against the Dark Wizard's will, I guess?
My people were once kings, wizard.
At first you think this is a ruse, but then they're arguing and not Saruman straight up kills his former henchman, who is also the coolest looking guy in the village. Then Gandalf says he doesn't want to join with the Dark Wizard, and so the wizard tries to bury the entire village as an example of what will happen if Sauron is not stopped. Gandalf shields the Harfoots, but the Stour village is decimated. Nori bucks up and says Gandalf and her should travel their own paths, and so Gandalf goes to join Tom Bombadil and sing a song. So, what were the Harfoots even for in this season? They served zero purpose except to waste time and make me feel dirty. They spent most of their time away from Gandalf anyway. What a waste. Over in Numenor, and a move echoed in a lot of Western politics these days, Ar-Pharazôn smears his opponents in the worst way he can think of, and calls the faithful allies of Sauron. They are labeled traitors, and all proper Numenorians are instructed to turn them in. While the soldiers are rounding up the political opposition, Elendil's daughter has a change of heart after things have gotten too real, and covers for her father so he can escape. Miriel refuses to leave the city with Elendil, but gifts him Narsil, the famous blade from the lore.
The shots of Narsil.
And so he rides off alone, like in the vision in the Palantir in episode 5. Back in Eregion, the orcs are properly ravaging the city as one would do if one were an orc. It's a really cool looking scene until Galadriel shows up to ruin it with her oh so impressive combat skills and incredible emoting. She leads the women and children out of the city, and this friggin' kid won't stop looking at the camera. You know, director, if a shot isn't working or one of your actors isn't working out as well as they could, you can do another take, or cut that actor out, or fix it in editing, or something. And when the orcs attack, her fear is immediately evident. Let's see that again. Bone chilling, isn't it? Sorry, but these extras are dog shit. Why frame the shot like this with these crappy actors so dominant in the background? Like, what is this? This one's smiling, and this one looks like she's just seen an orc whip out his cock or something. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Galadriel says she'll give Adar the 9 rings of men if the orcs just take her and let the others go. And the orcs agree. We jump over to poor little Celebrimbor being turned into a pincushion by Sauron. Not like that. I think this was one of the most impactful scenes in the episode, as it brings Celebrimbor and Sauron's story arc to a messy end. And as much as I criticized these two during the season, I did feel some pity for Celebrimbor, and it was a fittingly violent end for the Lord of Eregion, as he goads Sauron into finishing him off. I still like Celebrimbor's end in the lore, where Sauron is said to have paraded him about like a banner, but this was pretty good, and far better than most of what we've gotten in this show. Then, my least favorite orc character meets up with Sauron, and we jump to two of the least compelling and uninteresting characters in the entire show. Does anyone care about Theo anymore? Or Isildur? The show itself forgot about these two for most of the season. Isildur is getting ready to return to Numenor and says his goodbyes to Theo. Then Estrid sneaks in and tells Isildur about how her current man is building a house in ode to their love. But Estrid hints that she didn't really know what love was until she met Isildur.
I always thought his kindness was what love felt like.
Why are you telling me this?
And so they kiss, while her husband, or whatever he is milling around outside. And Isildur asks her to come with him. The man is building her a house, and she's sneaking around making out with Isildur under his nose? Damn, that's cold.
I thought you...
So did I.
I can't believe you're here. He asked the gods to keep our love strong as long as the home stood.
Then Discount Joffrey shows up and declares the settlement as an outpost for Numenor's soldiers, telling everyone that they'll have to supply timber for Numenor's navy in exchange for supplies. Back with Galadriel, she turns herself into Adar, and can't help but noticing that he's turned all sexy because of the elf ring he took from Elrond last episode. But before you think there's going to be any juicy shipping going on between our elf warrior woman and another bad boy, Adar just gives Galadriel the ring back and says, "Okay, let's go defeat Sauron together." So what was that whole scene in the last episode for? Nothing. That's it. Nothing. Just to pump up some more artificial drama. The orcs interrupt the love fest and claim that Sauron injured Glug, the shittest orc in all of Mordor. But, surprise, surprise, Glug betrays Adar, and the orcs do him Caesar style. I knew that orc would betray Adar, but I thought it would have been over protecting his hot orc wife or something. And then Sauron orders the orcs to raise Eregion, as if that isn't what they've been doing all along. Galadriel is naturally upset with Sauron, and we get to see some more of her inimitable combat skills and fierce facial expressions.
Give me your ring. And the 9.
Do you wish to heal me?
God, she's so intimidating, isn't she? You can just feel the weight of her blade as it slices through the air. The duel continues as the orcs run rampant in the city, and Gil-galad and Elrond are brought forward as prisoners. Elrond attempts to reason with an orc, pleading him not to burn the written records of Celebrimbor's work. He attempts to reason with this guy. Yeah, I think he might listen. Like, that kind of begging is only going to encourage these monsters.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
Then we're back to this. This looks like me on the toilet the other day. Yeah, I'm hard on Morfydd Clark because the woman can't act or emote in a convincing way whatsoever. She's about as good as Amandla Stenberg.
Can't believe my sister's Jedi scum.
It is not my wish to harm you.
Do you wish to heal me?
Have faith in me.
But if you point that out, you'll be called racist or misogynist or something. Why the hell these productions keep hiring actors who are clearly unqualified for the job, I'll never know. It's always worse when these substandard actors are opposite someone with some actual chops, which happens to Galadriel constantly. And quit trying to make these 5'2", 120-pound women seem tough. It's bad enough that this Galadriel is being portrayed as a completely different character than anything in the lore or the Peter Jackson movies. But the directors try to pass her off as some badass girl boss, and she's shorter than most of the people around her. It's like watching a stubby child wave a sword around. It's pathetic. Would you be intimidated by this? At least get someone who can pull the tough look off. Someone more akin to Charlize Theron, or Kate Beckinsale, or Emily Blunt, or Gina Carano, although she wouldn't look very elf-like, but you get the idea. If you're hellbent on a smaller person, someone like Kate Beckinsale would be perfect, because she's absolutely tiny but can pull the tough, intimidating look off no problem. Obviously not Kate Beckinsale herself, but someone with that profile. Or just get Morfydd Clark some acting classes, because this is not working. Sauron plays some mind games with Galadriel, assuming a few different forms. Good God, now there are 2 of them. Galadriel gets stabbed with Morgoth's crown, and the pain is visible on her face. Sauron takes the 9 rings and demands Galadriel's ring as well, so she takes it off as if she's under a spell. And just when all seems lost, Galadriel slaps Sauron with the sickest burn ever.
You wish to heal Middle-earth. Heal yourself.
And throws herself off the cliff like the real girl boss she knows herself to be. Don't worry, she survives, of course. Even though every bone in her body should be shattered and her organs splattered in a red mist from the impact. She wasn't even wearing the ring at the time, so that excuse is null. It seems the Dwarven army is done with whatever it is they were doing, and they finally decide to show up at the battle.
Dwarves.
Yes, indeed. And if you say, well, maybe the Dwarven army was marching to the battle while Balrog was attacking the king, you'd be wrong. The army was in Khazad-dûm, doing nothing, and they were clearly there when the king got killed, because Narvi knows about it.
The prince is in mourning.
Oh, and Arondir is also there, fighting and killing orcs as if he didn't get stabbed to death in the previous episode. Damn, his armor doesn't even have a scratch on it. There's no blood or anything. The guy's a beast. The orcs run back to Sauron, and just before this loser can talk about many Uruks losing their lives, Sauron does what we've been waiting for all along and silences that whiny bitch forever. The elf boys find Galadriel, and Elrond says he can heal the wound that Morgoth's crown made by using her ring. Just ignore the impact damage from the plummet of over 100 meters or more. That's never brought up. We're given a shot of the Dark Wizard staring menacingly into the sky, and Narvi, who's already back from the battle, hints that the succession of the Dwarven throne might be a bit rocky. Galadriel wakes up, and the elf lads gather around her like she's a Disney princess or something. Then Gil-galad draws his sword, and our multi-ethnic group of elves start yelling in triumph, like a bunch of dumb humans. And that's it. Episode 8. I can't say it was the worst, but damn, did Amazon ever miss a trick with the Balrog. Season 2 felt oddly rushed, but slow and tedious at the same time, depending on which scene or storyline was in focus. Let's break it down. For Numenor, we went from Pharazôn taking control to Elendil escaping the city with Narsil. For the dwarves, an agricultural crisis was quickly dealt with by the Dwarven rings, which turned King Durin into a mad case in record time, only for Durin's Bane to snuff him out in a scene that lasted about a minute, or not even. Durin the Younger had to contend with his father's madness and Disa's nagging, all while trying to warn the elves about Sauron's influence. The Harfoots found themselves in the Stour village and sat around until the Dark Wizard destroyed it. And Gandalf finally got his staff and his name after a minimal amount of effort. Isildur spent his time trying to make it back to the coast in Numenor, flirting with a rando wild woman he found along the way. And Theo was largely forgotten, except for a little adventure with the Ents. Elrond spent a couple episodes running back and forth to Eregion, trying to warn Celebrimbor about Sauron, then turning back and warning Gil-galad about the orc army under Adar, only to come all the way back with an army to fight at the siege of Eregion. Galadriel spent half the time captured by Adar, then stealing the thunder at the end of the season, facing off against her sexy bad boy, surviving a wound by Morgoth's crown, and a fall down a 100-meter cliff with barely a scratch. Celebrimbor and Sauron probably had the most interesting and fleshed out scenes this season, and although it started off with a weird and inconsistent tone, the last few episodes actually portrayed the betrayal and Celebrimbor's powerlessness fairly well, I think. Oh, and Arondir ran around killing orcs and surviving multiple stab wounds. I mean, that looks like it was aimed up at his heart, but whatever. If that sounds like a lot of characters, I agree. And I think that's one of the core problems with this show. Too many insignificant characters and plot lines taking away from the overall story. The stuff with the dwarves was interesting, and I thought it should have taken a lot longer for King Durin to fall under the ring's influence. I could have seen him sticking around for another season before the Balrog shows up. By that same token, the forging of the rings is a pivotal moment in all of the history of Middle-earth, but it felt too quick. One moment the Dwarven rings are just done, and then we're on to the rings for men. More time was spent on that part, but still. I think it could have been done in a completely different way with more emotion and tension and manipulation. Galadriel just sucks the air out of the room whenever she's there. It's hard to take her seriously with anything because of the terrible acting, which is only harmed by her ridiculous plot armor and irrational behavior that's nothing like how she should be acting as a 5,000-year-old elf. The Harfoots shouldn't be there. Gandalf shouldn't be there. Arondir shouldn't be there. Theo shouldn't be there. And that's just a few that could have been cut with little to no consequence to the show. It would have streamlined the story and allowed for a greater focus on what actually mattered. Give me more of the dwarves and elves and Sauron corrupting people. This is a sad state of affairs for one of the most beloved fantasy franchises out there. Terrible mismanagement of the production, coupled with myopic writing, poor direction, and a misguided emphasis on meaningless story beats and artificial drama, has ruined what could have been an epic show for the ages. It doesn't help that the show keeps copying lines from the Peter Jackson movies, which just reminds you of that far superior production. Well, it's over for now, and I, for one, am glad of that. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thanks for joining me on this journey.